Some people talk about greatness, others live it. Today, we're introducing a man who's done both on and off the mat. Collin Palmer is one of the most decorated wrestlers to ever come out of Ohio. A four-time state champion, a national powerhouse in youth wrestling, and now the head of one of the most successful wrestling clubs in the country. For me, this interview hits a little different because Collin and I are the same age, and I've been a huge fan of his since my own high school days. I even had the chance to meet him when he came out to Delaware for a clinic, and being his demonstration partner was one of those unforgettable moments. On this episode of Kumite Lifestyle, Collin brings raw perspective on what it takes to compete at the highest levels, the lesson he's learned from setbacks, and now he's shaping future athletes with the same intensity he brought to the mat. So buckle up because Collin Palmer's story is more than just wrestling. It's about mindset, leadership, and the fight to always keep growing. Let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Kumite Lifestyle. Guys, today we are joined with an exciting guest. His name is Collin Palmer, and Collin is someone that I've known indirectly now for a while, but I had a chance to meet him when he came up to Delaware that one time. So
Oh yeah.
I definitely want to talk about that. And Collin, just so you know, I've done my homework, and I'm a huge fan of what you're doing, especially with your club. But let's backtrack. So I know you've been wrestling for a very long time. So let's start there. When did you get introduced to the sport of wrestling? And then we'll kind of we'll kind of explore from there. So how did you get started, bro?
Yeah, man. So I started when I was 5 years old. We started in it was called Strongsville YMCA. So my brother was doing karate at the time, and my parents threw me into wrestling, and it just seemed to be a solid fit. And I mean, within 2 to 3 years, we were hitting the Tulsa National Circuit and all that good stuff. So we were embedded pretty early in life. So and
Yeah,
then
and
been doing it ever since. Went to St. Edward High School and then went to Ohio State and then started a club and here we are today. So still rocking.
yeah, and I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like you like literally accomplished everything at the youth level because you mentioned Tulsa, and I remember reading, I think USA Wrestling Magazine. I think it was your freshman year, and you had all your trophies and medals behind you, and I always thought that was pretty cool. And then, like you just mentioned, your brother, and I had a chance to watch him wrestle at the RAF, which was pretty
Oh yeah.
cool. And I know
Yep.
that you were at that event too. And I know wrestling has evolved so much over the years, so it's something that I want to like kind of pick your brain at. But growing up as a youth wrestler, what was that transition like? And because it obviously made you the wrestler that you are today, but you
Right.
have experiences that a lot of people that I feel don't have. But growing up, because after researching you as well, because I know your dad also trained you, Lance and you, but just
Right.
explain what training was like as a kid and just that development over the years into your middle school and high school years.
Yeah, for sure. The good part about going through it, as a kid, you see like you can kind of reflect back and see like what you would change with your own and things like that. So we've redirected kids that I train today a little bit different than what we did as kids. So, one of the main things I would say is, like we were hitting 150 to 200 matches a year, and obviously, your body just isn't meant to keep up with that kind of pace. So, I try to promote our guys nowadays just to focus on maybe 50 to 75 matches a year, focus more on training and, just keeping your body healthy. Obviously, I got to Ohio State. I ended up getting MRSA in my spine. I was doing some epidural steroid injections, and from those, it ended up destroying my entire lower back. So that's how I bounced into the coaching world and didn't have a whole lot of accolades in the college realm. But with our youth, we were doing 4 days a week of strength training. We were doing 3 to 4 days a week of wrestling practice, whether that was a practice or a private with one of the coaches or, wrestling camp on the weekend. So from about 7, 8 years old, we were really, really rocking full throttle. On top of that, we'd be doing 2 to 3 days a week of cardio. I mean, our training is in our youth days were extreme. I mean, it felt like we were training for the Olympics every day. And I heard quite a few guys, David Taylor and such, talking about the amount of time each person's body has, and they always say it's like that 10,000 and 12,000 hour mark. And I think we burn it out at a way too young of an age. Myself specifically, obviously Lance is pretty healthy, and he also started the sport about 4 years after me. He didn't start till he was about 9 or 10, so maybe that had some effect in it. But yeah, so with our guys now, man, we try to focus on a ton of training, 2 3 days a week, nothing too extreme, and then we'll have like a weekend camp here and there. But definitely more now. It's more about plugging in all the techniques and the drills and understand the positioning instead of going and competing 150 to 200 matches a year. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned something that's really important, I feel, and that's the burnout point, because I feel like every athlete at some point is going to experience that, whether it's the mental or the physical fatigue. For you though, growing up, and like you mentioned David Taylor as well, because he's someone that I've also followed over the years. Was there ever a point growing up that you said, "Man, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore." But did you ever feel pressured that you had to wrestle?
yeah, I mean, you always run into those what do you call them? Those mental walls where you're just like, man, this is more work than the reward, and you don't really see the value of it sometimes when you're completely deep into it. Could be mid-season, could be getting ready for the next season, whatever it may be. But obviously, you learn a lot of disciplines as you carry on and you keep pushing through and things like that. And obviously, our path had opened up for us. Lance ended up going into the PFL and MMA world. I ended up in the coaching world. So ultimately it kind of paved out our careers for us. So
Yeah.
uh, it's a good part about not giving up, because I feel like at any point, especially nowadays, it's way easier to just throw in the towel, just be like, well, we could do something a little bit easier today.
Yeah.
But yeah, the guys who stick with it, man, they just they're the people that are out there running businesses, running their own businesses, the creators, the, entrepreneurs. Like, it's just a different mindset. So obviously, burnout it's a real thing. I think you just learn how to navigate with it or through it, and you just keep it moving. So
Yeah, there's a pretty cool quote that says like once you wrestled, like everything else in life is easy. And I think that's true to some sense. I mean, obviously there's going to be ups and downs with any type of business endeavor, but I feel like you've definitely I don't want to
yeah,
say surpassed that because it's still evolving in a sense, but it's been awesome
right.
getting to see that transition from, wrestler to coach. And I know that wasn't your plan initially because I know that you got recruited heavily by, I'm sure, like, the top schools. So when you were in high school, right? So you just became a four-time state champ, Ironman champ, Beast of the East, and all these things that you competed in. And I'm sorry if I'm missing anything, but was there ever a point in high school you were like, man, like, I'm the guy, like no one's gonna beat me. Like how did you stay motivated? Because like I know you were at the top there for a very long time, and then I watched your epic showdown with David Taylor,
Yep,
you
yep,
guys' a senior year. But being where you were, Colin, like how did you like because I was never at your level. I started actually a little bit later, my sophomore year, but I remember watching your videos and I loved your front headlock series, and I would
yep.
try to imitate that in matches. And I'm thinking, man,
Uh,
like, why can't I do this the way Colin does? And people are like, bro, because you're not good. I was just like, yeah, but like, I'm holding the head, I'm holding the arm, and
yeah.
Delaware is a very small state, so. At that time, I was also emulating like Alex Mead, his speed,
Oh
and just
yeah.
and I'm like, it's like I can copy these guys, but I can't replicate this, like, the success.
Yep, yep.
Um, but of course, I know, of course, like, growing up, that takes a lot of years and practice. But in high school, though, like, how did you stay focused? Like what was able to still keep you like sharp because you were at the top?
I would say, for us, it was a tad bit different. Like, people are nowadays going to tournaments and they're like, oh, I hope I can get on the podium. I hope I can win it. We had training partners, David Taylor and Logan Staber and Tony Jameson and all these just super heavy hitters. I
Yeah,
mean, all of our partners, you know what I mean? Whether it was at camps or practices or Burnett's or wherever we were going. So, when you have a group like that, you're just more looking forward to who's going to get the most pin award, who's getting MVP of the tournament, who's getting the most tax, so you're competing against, the other top dogs for
yeah,
the elite awards. You know what I mean? You're not really necessarily going to that tournament just to win it. You're going to that tournament to see who's the best of that tournament.
Sure.
It was usually one of our guys. Like I competed with Taylor back and forth, kind of not knowingly, just more like, oh, he got a pin in 38 seconds. Oh, I got a pin in 43 seconds. I got you know what I mean? Things like that.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of our motivating factor. When I started having like injuries, it was tough. It was very, very tough to stay motivated because everything you tried to do, your body just wasn't working with you. I had broke my kneecap, tore my patella tendon, had a tear in my shoulder. I had 4 discs in my back that were all jacked up. So it was like everything just started crumbling all at the same time. So staying motivated around that period, I think that was around my junior year. It was
Yeah.
challenging. It was very challenging because a lot of the work you were doing also, you couldn't do it to the same caliber. It was like, hey, we're going to have to dial this back to about 50 to 75%. So then you don't feel mentally like you're prepped. Like you don't feel like you're prepared going into those
Yeah.
bigger matches. I know, like when I wrestled Taylor, I didn't feel like I was really ready for that match. I did feel the week of the match that I trained probably the best I did in probably 2 years.
Yeah.
But obviously, one week is not going to prep you well enough for that type of match. But ultimately, our motivation came from just competitors around us, opponents, competitors around us, just guys that were also at that level, locally. And from there, you're just like, well, I'm not going to slip. This guy's still going, this guy's still going. And so it
Yeah.
was nice having people next to you that were doing the same thing, same goals.
Yeah. And I feel like our time in high school, man, we had like there's so many great wrestlers, not just in Ohio, but just nationally as well. And obviously every class has good wrestlers, but I remember specifically growing up in our era in high school. Obviously, we had you guys in Ohio, you, Taylor, and Stieber, and
Yeah.
then Jordan Oliver is another one that I
Yeah.
I remember you mentioning in another podcast that when you were selecting your college choices, from what I understand, you were obviously going to go, the Buckeye route, but you were kind of also contemplating between Oklahoma State. And one of the things that I remember you saying was that you wanted a really good training partner, and at the
Yep.
time, you felt that Jordan Oliver was that guy. So, like, what's your relationship with him? And just from a national scene, like, who are some of the national guys at that time that you not looked up to because you were kind of like at that same tier, but
Right.
kind of gave you that motivation, like you're saying.
I mean, I wrestled Oliver quite a few times. We became buddies. We hung out when we were at sophomore, junior nationals, all that good stuff. And he was obviously going through the recruiting process at that point. And him and Meade had come to Ohio State. They had done a visit. They went to Oklahoma State, did a visit, and we were trying to get him to go to Ohio State. And he told us that once he got down there with John Smith, it was hard to tell John no.
Sure.
So or Coach Smith. So with that being said, my thing was I knew that I needed a partner that was, parallel to how I was. And at Ohio State at the time, they had a monster senior class. So you had Reese Humphrey, my brother, Dave Rella, Pasillo, I think. Jaggers had just graduated. I mean, you had lost like probably 7 or 8 of the varsity of the starting guys. So the class that was coming in with me was not the caliber of what we were looking for. And I kind of ended up at Ohio State following in my brother's shoes. I absolutely loved Ohio State, like loved everything about it. Since I was like 10 years old, I always wanted to go there. So it was
Sure.
more along the lines of I was really pushing for Oliver to go to Ohio State. That way I had selfishly had a really good training partner. Probably couldn't have seen myself at Oklahoma State. Um, Never really lived much like outside of the city, so it'd have been a little bit of a change for me. But it was cool doing that one year with my brother. We got to live together and all that good stuff. But after that year, he ended up leaving.
Hmm.
So he ended up shooting out to Virginia Tech, coached with Coach Dresser
Yeah.
for a year
Yep.
before he went, back to Iowa State or whatnot. But and then Lance ended up in the MMA world all the way out in California. So I ended up having all my issues with my back at that point. So everything with Ohio State just kind of crumbled all at one time.
Yeah.
So it was pretty unfortunate. But I don't know. I feel like, a little bit better health. and having Oliver there with me might have been the push I needed to kind of venture through, maybe take a medical redshirt year or whatever, and get
Yeah.
back on track where I needed to be. So
Yeah. And during your college years, or shortened there, or like lack thereof due to injuries, of course, when you were watching your peers that you grew up with, like Dake, Ramos, and these guys that maybe you
yeah,
maybe weren't as well connected with. And I think we talked about this a while back. I shot you a message because I'm a huge wrestling fan and I love kind of diving into the perspective of other wrestlers. Was
right.
that tough for you to kind of be in the back seat watching these guys that you're like, you know what? I used to beat that guy, or like I know I can be there. Like
Yeah.
what was that transition like, bro?
I mean, I feel like there's a bunch of us out there that, were I don't want to call it has-beens, but when
Yeah.
I got to that college realm, when I started seeing, Ramo, you're naming all the guys who I was buddies with, you know what I mean? Still friends with them today, but
Yeah.
Ramos, we were always competitors from young kids, when he was being coached up by like Izzy and
Hmm.
Warren Metz and guys like that, and um, so you got guys like him, you got Taylor, you got who else? You got Kindig. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. So to
Josh
see all
Kindig.
these
Yep.
guys, it was just absolutely awesome to watch it. But yeah, selfishly, it's like, oh, man, this is, you got Taylor. He goes and wins. It turns out to probably be one of the best wrestlers we've ever seen. But
Sure.
and then you have Steber. He goes and wins a world title, and I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, dude. I'm like, we were all training together. I was hoping to have the same accolades, but
Yeah.
yeah, you're excited for them because like what they've invested. You've been side by side with them, scrapping the same rooms, everything, and you
Yeah.
know what it takes to get to that level. And it's like for them to keep going and keep excelling, it's like holy cow, they
Yeah.
killed it. So that's unfortunately, but you're like that selfish factor, I don't want to call it a jealousy factor, but definitely selfish. Like, ah, shit, there would
Sure.
have been end up on that same note or same list or whatnot. But yeah, man, super proud of those guys. It's cool to see everybody succeeding. Like we went to RAF a couple weeks ago. Everybody across the board is either guys we competed with or coaches that coached against us or
Yeah.
just a good group of people, man. It's absolutely awesome to be in that even to be in that category with some of them guys.
Was it pretty cool to run into those guys? Like, did you get a
Oh,
chance to
great.
connect with them?
It was like a family. It was like a family reunion. It was crazy.
That's awesome.
Some of those guys I hadn't seen since like Tulsa days, and you know how it is. Like the pace is just fast. I run a club, so I'm not really in the college realm every day. So running into Coach Bormetz at Michigan and Lee Pritz from Arizona State, and Izzy obviously and Guida. I mean, it's just so many good people in the wrestling world. It's just awesome. Every time I venture around, it's a
Yeah.
hell of a time. So.
Did you get a chance to connect with Kyle Dake or David Taylor or Tyler Caldwell? Those guys? While
I did not. Taylor was not there. I can't remember if I saw Caldwell or not. Yeah. Caldwell. I ran into Caldwell. He was in Lance's locker room. He's a
Yeah.
great dude, man. He's
Yeah.
awesome. I kind of would have wished that him and Lance would have wrestled against each other. You know what I mean? Like same age, same era. I
Yeah.
thought that would have been pretty cool because Caldwell was definitely he was kind of like the magic man of that era. I mean, he just pulls stuff out of anywhere. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
yeah, ran into him. Obviously Yanni was in there, and it
Yep.
was just a good group of people, man, all the way around. Like I think what was nice about it is everybody obviously was out there to compete, but they knew they're making money. Everybody's kind of it's a different. It wasn't as like intense mindset, and people like kind of being I don't know jerks to each other, dicks to each other, whatever you want to call it. It
Yeah.
was more like everybody was buddy buddy, and I was like, this is cool. This is real cool. So everybody, is there to put on a show, but in
Yeah.
the back, it's like okay, everybody's buds. So
Yeah.
that was neat.
Excuse me. Yeah. So before we jump into the college, I'm sorry, the coaching scene, and then we'll
Yeah,
wrap it up. Something that I've noticed is in high school, I feel like, especially wrestlers, obviously being competitive. And I feel like, and I could be wrong, but like when you have your dads there coaching and stuff and kind of
yeah,
pushing you, it can be a little more extreme. But I noticed that when the athletes transition to college, they seem to kind of mellow out. And like you said, like everything's more of a family base. So
yeah,
like, do you see that too? Like,
yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it is some of these parents they live through their kids, or they have to be the driving force behind their kids. So it just creates somewhat of like a tough love relationship or an overboard relationship. I don't know what you want to call it, but so when you get to that college realm and you have these college coaches who are basically, a group of dads or a group of like older brothers to you,
Yeah,
it definitely takes a little bit off the parents' plate and it creates that little bit of separation that I think is needed. You know
sure.
what I mean? So I think, for an athlete to be really, really good, they need the parent to be the parent, and then you need your coaches to be your coaches. And I think sometimes that boundaries cross, or a lot of times that boundaries cross, and it creates too much tension for the wrestler where there's too much on the mind instead of just having like a open mind, just being ready to compete, being ready to get out there and do what you're supposed to do. Instead, it's just kind of cluttered with, well, I hope dad doesn't get mad, or I hope this person, you know what I mean? It's like that
Yeah,
shouldn't even be a worry. You know what I mean? That should be, hey, we all train together. We're just driving you to get there, blah, 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 support system. And I just think sometimes those boundaries are crossed. And I think it takes, the college realm before it kind of pulls it back. And then it's like, okay, now we can be buds.
yeah, yeah,
So,
for sure. Yeah, that's a good perspective. All right, so now let's jump into your coaching scene because I know you've been
yeah,
coaching
for
now,
sure.
like pretty big. And when you first started jumping into coaching, did you feel like you were gonna have the same success as an athlete, or I mean, I'm sure you knew like it was gonna take time, based from the time you started to now. But what
Right.
are some of the biggest things, or like maybe it's a couple of things, but what are a few things that you don't mind sharing that you've learned personally as a coach, and maybe something that you wish you would have known in the beginning of coaching that
Yeah.
you know now?
I thought when I first stepped into the coaching realm, I thought for sure, I'm like, man, I'm at this level of, being a competitor. This is going to be super, super simple to get these guys to the top. I
Yeah,
was like, I'm just going to train them exactly how I train and how I was trained. And I learned real fast that doesn't work.
yeah,
There's probably like 1% of kids nowadays that can handle what we went through.
yeah,
And not saying that in a bad way, but it was pretty bad. I
sure,
mean, it was pretty extreme training. And there's a lot of kids nowadays. Like I coach kids every day, and I love these guys, but there's probably one or two guys out of my entire club of about 150 to 200 that could even hang with how we train. It's
sure,
just the mentality's different, the work ethic's different. If the wind blows the wrong way, guys just don't have that same like punching the punch back and like adversity. I don't know, that adversity shift. But so I had to adjust. I had to adjust totally. Like, now I try to fill my guys with as much, basics and, the high basics mixed in with the highest level of techniques that are throughout the sport at the moment. And, try to get their aggression and their cardio and all that, leveled up. But it's definitely not exactly what I would push for. If I could mold one kid exactly how I wanted it, it
yeah,
would probably be something similar to like a Bo Bassett. Like, because
sure,
that's how we competed. We're always looking for techs and pins in the first period. We weren't trying to go 3 periods worth of wrestling. We were trying to put them away early. And you just don't see that anymore. You see too many people trying to compete and like, oh, this guy won this, so
yeah,
I hope I get the takedown in the last 30 seconds of the third period. It's like, what
yeah,
is that? You know what I mean? So
yeah,
just the mindset and the mentality in general is completely different. I don't want to say, it's a softer generation, but I will say with all the resources they have and, all the clubs, every street corner,
yeah,
the level of wrestling and wrestling IQ has definitely raised. The
sure.
level of intensity and like grit has definitely, I don't know if it lowered, but you get what I'm saying.
I
Uh,
do. Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
just different. I mean, there's not as many killers out there on the mat. It's more like, oh, let's be on the flow highlight reel. You know what I mean? Which
yeah,
is, I mean, it's fun. It's awesome to watch. You see a little bit of everything, and I like that. I like unorthodox wrestlers. I like a whole mix of it, but I do like those gritty, Brent Metcalfs and how we were and things like that, and
yeah,
stuff like that. I mean, that's what people want to watch. John Reeder with his face split open, winning a national title. Like,
yep,
that's the shit we want to see. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I feel the same as as a jiu-jitsu practitioner because jiu-jitsu has also evolved over the last 10, 15 years. But Colin, I feel it's a fine line as far as, the coaching sense because I know you're me- so I know you just mentioned about Bo Bassett's, but do you think that at some point though you can't because not every student learns that way. So
Right,
when you take a kid like Bo Bassett, who's obviously doing an amazing job, but
right.
because he was pushed so hard and and like, very similar to you, do you feel like when they get to college, there's a strong potential that they're going to burn out, or as opposed to a kid that maybe wasn't pushed as hard, but they're going to peak at the college level? Because we've seen that too, where kids that we didn't really even know about in high
Right.
school, they get to college and then they become all Americans. And
Take off. Yep.
yeah, so what do you think? Is there a
I,
fine line there? Because how do you know though?
I don't think you do know. I think each athlete's different. I think each kid's mentality is different. Obviously, a lot of people get to college and next thing you know, they blow a knee out, they blow this out,
Yeah,
you go from I think a lot of it could have to do with, you have training partners in your high school room that, you guys just kind of go through the flow. When you get to college training rooms, I mean, you're alongside dudes that are all Americans and national champs. Like, they're not really giving up as much. You know what I mean? And I
yeah,
think that's where, like, places like Penn State, for instance, might do a pretty good job because you see a lot of play wrestling and sparring and things like that. And I know they don't put their full routine out there on the internet for people to know, but you see a lot less injury coming from the Penn State crew.
yeah.
A lot of these rooms, like by the time they get to postseason, they got the big knee braces and ankles, shoulders. Like,
All
I
banged up.
think, yeah, I just think that by the time they get deeper in the season, it's just I mean, it's a war zone. So I think that Big Ten wrestling every single weekend, Friday and Sunday or whatever schedule they still do. It's just brutal on the body, So you see these guys from these smaller schools who don't have quite that, rough schedule. I
Yeah,
mean, showing up to NCAA's are pretty fresh.
sure.
So, if your body's fresh, your brain's probably fresh. I mean, there's a lot more on your side than showing up, on one wheel.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think just the recruiting itself as a whole and things, I know you see this too because I'm sure you've had kids that transition to college. It really is a gamble because a program can be great on paper, but if a kid doesn't match up with the right program or the right coaches, I feel that can
yeah.
also stint their development as
100%.
well.
I think the or I'm sorry, the transfer portal. I think it's a great thing for the kids nowadays too, because when you got a guy that comes in your living room, tells you, "Hey, we really want you. Here's a scholarship." Blah blah blah. You truly don't know that guy. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And I think after going through a year with them, I think you learn people a lot better,
sure.
and you learn the ins and the outs about them, and I think it gives these kids a little bit better avenue where they're like, I'm going to go check out somebody else. This really isn't my fit compared to, where you're stuck somewhere for 4 to 5 years. So
Yeah,
I think that makes a difference.
for sure. Yeah. So Colin, what's next for you? So
So we got some big news coming up right now, man. We're opening one of the first wrestling combat shoe stores throughout the country. So
nice.
what we're doing is we're putting it in our gym to start. So we'll have like a home store. We got all the big brands. We got Nike, Asics, Rudis, Adidas, Spartan, Scrap Life, working on ONEV. And then what we're trying to do from there is we wanted to add lifestyle shoes. So On Clouds, Hoka's, Brooks, the whole works. That way we had, but small boutique, wrestling related, minus the running related portion of it. And just build from there, man. Just have some different avenues and have some more options for these kids. We're trying to build an entire campus. So we want to put up a facility, have a wrestling room there, obviously, have it where we can do our training camps and all. And then we would have our team store in there. And then from there, just blow it up, build it out, have a spa recovery center. I mean, we're going all in. So probably within the next 2 years, 3 years, we'll have it all, an entire campus.
That's
You have to come
awesome.
out and check it out, dude. It'll be
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, man, for sure. Things I'll definitely do that once it's all launched and all
Yep,
said and
yep.
done. Yeah, man.
Sweet.
Hey, Colin, listen, thank you so much for coming on. I feel we had a chance to kind of not deep dive, but kind of get an early understanding of where you're coming from and your mindset, from youth, high school, and your early college years and then of course coaching experience as well, because you bring a lot of wealth to the sport and just life in general. And your students and your athletes are very lucky to have you. So, Collin, where can people find you?
cpwrestling.net.
Awesome.
Yep, yep. So if anybody needs anything, come see us.
Awesome. Collin, thank you so much for being on today's show. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.
Sounds good, man. You take it easy. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course.